Welcome, welcome everyone. We are so thankful that you've joined us today. I am your co-facilitator, Naomi Harm, and I have my best friend, teacher friend, Angie Koltoff is with us from St. Cloud, Minnesota. Even though we're miles away, we stay connected and we're so glad that you have joined us. We've got many teacher friends that have already joined in and are going to be starting with the chat. So let's give you a little bit of information first before we get started, and then we want to find out where all of you are from. So please note that when we are finished with our webinar today, you can earn a CE certification today, meaning that you can have continuing education clock hours. And to do that, there is a brief quiz for you to participate in. This will not only be noted here now, but at the end of our hour of our webinar today. And they are great questions to inspire your critical thinking of new ideas and insights that have been shared. Now, please note that the Coding and Robotics K-8 community is a free community to join. We would love for you to join as part of us joining that conversation as educators, but to also learn from all the incredible educators nationwide and internationally that are so passionate about including computational thinking into their everyday lessons and activities. So once again, we're very proud and thankful that Wonder Workshop is our sponsor for this particular workshop today, which is our online session. You can connect with Wonder Workshop at makewonder.com. We'll have some extra insights for you today too, and some resources directly supported from Wonder Workshop that can very much complement what you're already doing with computer science in your classroom. Once again, my name is Naomi Harm. I'm a Senior Strategic Manager for Wonder Workshop, and my wonderful teacher friend, Angie Koltoff, is coming from St. Cloud, Minnesota. She is a very proud Code.org facilitator, and also she is a tech integration specialist at one of the largest school districts in central Minnesota, known as St. Cloud. So Angie, I'm so glad that you're here today with us.
Thank you for having me, Naomi. I'm excited to share what we are doing in our classrooms in my school district and in school districts all over Minnesota.
Oh, excellent. I miss Minnesota. I'm originally from there, and it's great because you can also hear Angie and I have that wonderful Minnesota accent. So we're going to chime in and share some of our best Midwest practices, but also what we've been working with teachers nationwide today. But enough about us. It's about you, and we want to know a little bit more about you, of how you ignite collaboration, creativity, and computational thinking in your classroom. So please, at this time, we would like you to share with us in the back channel chat, which is on the left side panel, where you are joining us from in the world, because I've seen many of you coming already, not only from the East and West Coast, I've seen from Northern United States, Southern United States. I've also seen the Virgin Islands. So many of you are coming in from the Virgin Islands. This is wonderful. But please tell us, what is your special role in education that you, every single day, inspire teachers and children with amazing computer science ideas? So please tell us what you do and share the unique you, who you are. Angie, look at these teacher friends that are coming in from all over the world today. Isn't this marvelous?
Yes, and I'm also noticing that we have classroom teachers, but we also have specialists, whether they are STEM specialists or technology integrationists or media specialists or special education teachers, people who are involved with public libraries, grant coordinators. I just saw someone from Australia, Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly.
Spanish teacher.
Kia, that is here as well. Romania, New Mexico. Oh, good old Iowa. This is excellent. Got another great Midwest state. This is wonderful. Puerto Rico, excellent. We're so glad that you're online with us.
Turkey.
This is wonderful. Wow. What a great way to celebrate teachers, just to represent where you're coming in from and how passionate that you are to take time out of your day to spend an hour with us. So let's get started, but please use that back channel chat area today. And Angie and I will be taking turns really looking at some of those creative conversation pieces to pull those in to tie into what we're going to be sharing with you. But also on that top ribbon that you have of this particular anytime screen at the very top, you'll notice that you can also ask a question, and we will go through those questions periodically throughout our session and at the very end take more questions. So thank you so very much, teacher friends, for joining us. But we wanted to get started to give you a little background context of what this workflow will look like for all of you today in the next hour. What we have is we're going to be really looking at the foundational aspects of the why and importance of rotation stations. We're going to be sharing some amazing student management tips. Not only have I used them, but Angie and I are very much in sync when it comes to this, of how and where we work with our kids, but also how we work with teachers to help with a very positive, constructive workflow. We're going to be looking at unplugged activities. What can you do with no tech involved at all to dive deeper into concrete concepts of computer science applications? We're going to be looking at low-tech activities and some really tech enrichments. But one of my favorite parts, and I know this is Angie's as well too, but we're going to be looking at that authentic assessment. What creative reflection practices can you include to check for understanding and also to help students tell their story? So to get started today, we really want to give you just some background context of the why for rotation stations. For myself, as being a K-8 educator and a tech coordinator and director from my past positions, it always helped me so very much that when I could have very clear guidelines for my kids of the expectations of why we work in collaborative groups, so always starting off with that why, but why it provides the opportunity to really inspire deeper, authentic learning and to inspire more ownership for students, that they feel that they have ownership in their learning. And I really like it too because it provides kids an opportunity for choice and true autonomy for learning within that context of the concept, such as a computer science activity, or maybe it was a computational thinking actual lesson that's infused with a theme unit. But what's also very important is it helps me as an educator know how I can differentiate and really plan for certain groups of children that can meet their Lexile reading levels or their ability for their spatial reasoning concepts, and then taking those chunks of information from very complex chunks to break them down into snackable, bite-sized chunks of information for those kids to understand more clearly. But what I really like about it is that collaborative rotation stations for the kids that I personally have worked for really promote student agency, and it inspires students to become natural leaders, ask more questions, build stronger confidence, but to personalize that learning. But it allows for kids to know that they have that freedom to access that content and knowing that they're willing to share their knowledge and to help co-teach, not only with the students, but alongside with the teacher, to have it a more personalized fashion, to making sure every child can celebrate the concept of computer science in their classrooms. So the reflection question that we'd like to ask you to kick this off as we've just started is, what is your current goal when you're creating stations in your classroom to meet your needs of each and every one of your students? How do you allow for students to take ownership? What are your best tips and tricks? Could you share one or two ideas that works for you? Or please share a link of showcasing some of your best work, because maybe you've got a strategy, maybe you've got an image that you'd like to share, but we'd like to know, what's your current goal when you're creating stations in your classroom to meet the needs of each of your students? So I'll pause just a minute so you can reflect in the back channel chat. And Angie, I'll let you help summarize the thoughts that are coming in.
Okay, so I can see that people would like to meet the needs of all of their students so they can differentiate activities, make sure that all students are engaged, have some independence, making sure that students are able to create and give them time to explore.
So lots of adjectives are being used to explain why our children would have access, as what you've just said, Angie. It's really interesting. So independence, the ability to create, the ability to synthesize information is what I saw too. A passion interest, letting kids have choice. Absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing your critical insight. Keep those ideas coming, because we'd like to learn from you about what your overall goal is and the why for creating stations in your classroom to support our next concepts that we're going to be introducing, teacher friends. Thank you so very much for sharing your knowledge. As we continue on, you're going to see our workflow that Angie and I will be presenting with today. And each section is broken apart into key sections and topics. So we've got some amazing management tips that Angie and I work with on a continuous basis. And it's great to see because Angie works directly with students in classrooms and with teachers. And my particular position, I not only help coach teachers, but I get to co-facilitate with teachers, not as much anymore as what Angie does. So I love working and learning with Angie because she can add that credibility and authenticity to our webinar tonight. But Angie, I'm going to turn it over to you, dear friend.
Okay, like Naomi said, I go into classrooms on a daily basis, and sometimes I'm in multiple classrooms in one day. And one of the tips we're going to start with for when you're doing stations in your classroom is to model the activity whole group first. By doing this, you'll have more time once you're in your stations with your students, and it gives them a chance to think about what they're going to be doing and then ask any questions that they may have before you begin. Tip number 2 is designate an area and then set the expectations. So for example, in these pictures, you'll see that students are working on the whole group carpet in the classroom. In one picture, students are working in pairs with robots, and they each know which corner of the rug is for them and their learning space. They also know that during station rotation time, when we're moving from stations, they should not be walking on the carpet because that is where we have our robots and any of our materials that we need for this lesson. So they know that they need to walk around the carpet. We set that expectation and we remind them. And the other picture, you'll notice that students are pair programming. They're working together on an iPad, and each student has a square. So as they're learning how to work together and understand the personal space that they need to provide for each other, by setting them or having them each be in a square, they're able to navigate that space. The third tip is to assign jobs. In all of our classrooms, we try to have students working in groups. And sometimes it's difficult with young students who may not have had a lot of group work, but that collaboration and communication is such a big deal for them at a young age to start understanding. So in this example, you'll see that there are 4 students who are working with one Dash robot. In this classroom, we only had 6 robots. We had groups of 4 to 5 students, and they were able to successfully work together in a group because each person had a job and they knew what was expected in their job. The first few times we did this together in class, the classroom teacher and I helped them rotate through those jobs. And once they understood what was expected and were able to complete their job, then they were able to rotate on their own. So we had a Google slide up projected on the smartboard, and students saw the jobs and they knew what the task was. This helped them be successful in their group work.
Thanks, Angie. I'm just going to interject with a statement because we had Wanda Jordan from North Carolina ask a question, and she wanted to know, would any of these tips be viable for middle school students? And I would say absolutely yes. So even though this webinar tonight is focused on pre-K through 5, what we have for you can extend actually all the way through high school. And I use these tips actually for middle school and high school students too. So Wanda, take any of these examples and that you can scale them up for your middle school kiddos, not a problem. Some of the tips that I use during our workshops when we're actually working with educators and or with students is the workflow. And that workflow is, at times, it's not clear in a classroom setting, the directionality of going from one rotation to the next. So I make it very visible. And visible learning is very important for our teachers and our students. So I'll actually make signs that can slide right into a picture frame and that can be stationed at an actual station. So I put it up and it's clearly defined as station number 1. And like this particular one, it says Dashketball. When you turn over that frame, it actually gives key points of learning outcomes of why you're at the station, the procedure of what to do, and then what you're going to learn at the station. Sometimes those suggested just tips and tricks helps keep teachers and students on task for a longer period of time. But other management tips that I use, I also will help kids get through rotations quickly too. I will also include on my station frames, I will put a QR code. So if a child or a teacher is stuck, they can scan that QR code, and it's provided with an interactive tutorial to give them a step-by-step direction of how to use that particular robot or what they need to do to be successful to achieve the success from that learning outcome. I also have children, especially, we do ask 3 before me, because if I have 35 or 40 people in my class session, or even that many children, and there's only one of me as a teacher, you'll be having a lot of questions and feeling all of a sudden that that room can become quite chaotic. Have the strategy, ask 3 before me, even between your students, so that they know that they can leverage the student voice near them to help understand that before they come back to you. I also have student mobile share outs, meaning that sometimes you do have students in your classroom that are quite credible and capable of leading some of these stations. So having a student run a station, but also having a particular student that is maybe one of those go-to troubleshooters and helping when a student gets stuck. I also work with working with Dash and Dot, the robots, because you can record your voice as a teacher. And what I love it is that I, as a teacher, can put authentic questions that can be recorded of my voice. And then the kids can listen to the playback of my voice so they stay on task of knowing what they need to do. But students can record their voice to share their learning. So I have it for authentic check for understanding. So that's really helpful for me. But the best thing yet, a student or teacher genius bar. One of your stations really should include that. Kids need to have an opportunity to be a lead, to help peer coach another student or peer coach another teacher. Knowing that you have a rotation station set up that teachers can go to or students can go to is going to help leverage the communication and the collaboration of the overall concept that you are introducing in your classroom. Also, something that really works for myself as an educator, I like to be somewhat structured sometimes, but I want to make sure that I'm respecting the time of the teachers and students in my class period. When I say it's going to be 15 minutes, it's going to be 15 minutes. I'm not going to lax and go over to 25 and then I run out of time. I want to make sure that kids have a chance to explore, to create and make it each and every station. So any type of timer. So I've got timers that are online. At the very bottom, I've got 6 different manual timers. They range from $3 up to $15. And the new one is the Kids Echo Dot. If you haven't used that, my little granddaughter, Maddie Ann, it's a great way that she uses it to wake up every single morning, but also you can set a timer for a timed task, and it has great, beautiful transition music that the kids can get used to. So instead of me interjecting with my voice, they listen to the melody and tones to help them to get through the stations very nicely. Okay, Angie?
Before I talk about tip 6, we did have a question from Megan. And the question was, can you please share the descriptions of the jobs that you give your students in the groups? So we do want to let you know that this presentation is available for you after, and you are able to go back to that slide and see the pictures if you'd like, but I'll cover them before I move on. One person is the driver holding the iPad and dragging and dropping the block-based code with Dash. One person is the robot getter, so they're in charge of making sure the robot stays in the group area. Another person is the recorder, so they're writing down the code that they used and if it was successful or not, and the measurements that the 4th person is doing with the ruler. This was tied to our 2nd grade math standard with measurement. So that 4th person had the ruler and they were making the measurements on the paper. Okay, so on to tip number 6. So use model students and airdrop images to get them to every device. You'll also notice throughout our webinar, Naomi and I are going to share tips that we've learned from teacher friends, and we'll give you their information if they're on Twitter so that you can reach out to them too. So this is from Lindsay Nagorski, who's a teacher in Minnesota. And this is a tip that I saw in her classroom. Students who were her model students at that time were able to stand up in front of the classroom with an iPad, and she airdropped an image to them. In her class, they were working on phonics and word recognition, which is a literacy standard for 1st graders. They worked together to sort words that were a part of their curriculum on their iPad, And that image that you see on their screen is the image that she airdropped to them. It was a quick, easy way to make sure all students got that picture and were able to use it. Then they opened it up in a pic collage app that is easy for kids to use, and they turned it in via Seesaw so that she was able to check their understanding. The seventh tip that we have is a lot of the programs that you use with your students will have a username and password, and having a set place for that username and password is handy in case you have students who come in late or students who were finishing up a task and they need to get started right away. Instead of asking you how they get in or what their username and password is or where to find it, having a set desk or having it taped inside of their student planner is a great way for them to have that ownership and know exactly what to do. So we are going to ask you a question about your classroom management strategies. So what tips do you use with students to manage rotation stations successfully? We would love for you to type them into the chat, and we'll pause for a minute here and see what tips come in before moving on to our next category.
It's great to see as those reflections are coming in, Angie. Even some of the same tips we use, other teacher friends are using. So we can see too that some of them are using timers, the job task cards or badges, student badges that they're using, which is wonderful. I love it that teachers are using their words, that they're using key phrases for transitions and what they're using with their kids for job roles. Yes, exactly. Some of our teacher friends are using the technology and they're using Google Slides. So the deck shows which station that they're at so the kids can know where and what they're doing. Checklist and challenge cards, I see, are some great help. So thank you so much, teacher friends, for sharing those ideas. Keep those ideas coming in because that's how we gain better knowledge of helping with our workflow of working with our kids in the classroom. Excellent, excellent ideas that are coming in. If any of you actually have an online site or a credible piece of work that you'd like to share with others, please add it in here because that link can be shared and extend the knowledge of all of our learners today. So as we continue on, we're going to be focusing on kindergarten and first grade. So Angie, take it away.
So in this picture, I hope that you're seeing a group of kids working together to solve a problem that they have in front of them. So they are learning how to work with one another. They're learning how to communicate their ideals and build off of each other's ideals. And this is an unplugged lesson from code.org called Building a Foundation. While it's meant for elementary students, you could do this in middle school and high school. You'll notice that in one picture there are toothpicks and marshmallows, and in another picture there are toothpicks and dots. But I've also seen it done with tape and popsicle sticks. In one example, they're trying to build a foundation that's strong enough to support a pencil, and in the other, they're trying to build a foundation that's strong enough to support a textbook. In this next example, we are focusing on measurement and data in first and second grade, and kindergarten. So a lot of our activities will go from kindergarten through fifth grade with the elementary focus. But again, in middle school and high school, maybe you're going to change the fact that in here they're trying to build 45 cents. You'll have it more content specific to your middle and high school students. So in this one, we have students who are working together. They draw a card and they have to build a program for their robot to collect those coins. This is a lesson that we had to work up to. It wasn't the very first day that we were able to do this. They had pre-programming work with code.org and Codable. They're using blue bots in this first grade classroom, but in kindergarten, they had access to the Kibo robots. They've learned about breaking down problems and what to do if they run into a problem as they're programming, how to debug it. There's also a great YouTube video from code.org that's called Pair Programming, and it talks to kids about how to be a pair programmer, the jobs that you have as you're a driver and a navigator and what's expected of you. In this lesson, after the students were done and they were successfully able to drive their robot to collect their money, they took a video in Seesaw and turned it into the teacher. And then we were able to go and look through everyone's videos to make sure that students have an understanding of how to collect the money for the certain amounts. You'll also see that we created some helpful sheets with different pictures of coins, and students used whiteboard markers to circle the coins that they needed to drive over to collect their money for their pre-planning. In this one, you'll see that students are learning about events. And in kindergarten and first grade, Simon Says is a wonderful game to play. So we play Simon Says as a class, where I, the teacher, am Simon, but then they also get to be Simon when they play Simon Says with Scratch Junior, which is a great iPad app for early to non-readers, and Simon Says with Kibo. So the card that you can see in this picture has the little green flag, and the event of having that green flag in the code, when run and when you touch that green flag, the character will perform that action. So students are learning that they have to be specific in their sequence and that there is a beginning and with Kibo an end. And if there is no green flag, then Simon didn't say, and then you switch back to your partner and you don't make that program.
Some other things that we've used that's really great for some unplugged activities, but allowing for kids to include active movement and tangibility in their play. As you can see, there's a game here on the left. It's called Let's Go Code. This is from the Learning Resource Center, and you can easily buy this online or at a local department store. But what's wonderful about it, it makes learning mobile, and kids are actually physically and visibly noting of the code that they are created through walking steps. This is a great paired programming activity with kids. We've also had other students, up to 3 or 4, that you can break this game into different sections. What I like about this particular one, not only does it give you directionality arrows, I've used the directionality arrows within using the physically applied robotics when we're using the tech enriched activities. So it's a great bang for your buck when you're purchasing something like this, that it can be used in other activities. It ranges between $25 and $28. Now, the other 2 activities that we have here, we have Coder Bunnies and Robot Turtles. And these are 2 particular games that I personally played and have worked with teachers and students, and I know that Angie has too. What's wonderful is the little girl that has created Coder Bunnies is from the Santa Clara, California area. So it's very much personalized for myself as an educator, and she came into Wonder Workshop and actually did a wonderful presentation for our staff. Just a wonderful, unique little girl. And what's amazing about it, she loves to code, and so does her family love to code, but she wanted to make sure it was a family event. And so she created a board game to help other students understand the importance of coding and how to get started with coding without any technology. Now, the bottom one is called Robot Turtles, and very similar, that you are using a landscape in which that you are identifying a place marker of where and how to code. And you have task cards as well to help you learn how to code. What I like about this too, Robot Turtles has expanded their offerings now that you can actually use an app and a storybook that comes to life with us as well too. So they're differentiating it, the different types of levels of technology integration with the coding aspect. 2 other areas that are a lot of fun to use in your pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade classroom. What we have here is with Wonder Workshop has partnered with the company of Puzzlets, and now you can use Puzzlets with an interactive Bluetooth keyboard to program Dash. And with that coding, which is wonderful, you don't even need to use a tablet anymore. And it makes it for a great student center activity with teams of students. It can be used up on a table, but it's great that if they've created a sequence or a pattern that is longer in length than that code, that it's great to have Dash on the floor so kids can actually see the physical coding come to life. On the right side, the Dot Creativity Kit. Dot is also a robot from Wonder Workshop, and it's a stationary robot, but you get to activate and use the sensors, the LED lights, the gyroscope, and the accelerometer, and you have the ability to dress up and play with character development. There are 20 different types of challenge cards that come with this Dot Creativity Kit, but as you can see, you can also dress up Dot coding with the challenge cards and actually see your code come to life as well. Another example for kindergarten and first grade, if you haven't tried it, it's called Rolling for Code with Dash and Dot. I have the linked activity here for you that you can actually create a printable it's like a cardboard paper die that you can print out and that you can roll the code and actually create an actual sequence of code and then have kids recreate that pattern. So it's another way of having tangibility using non-tech and then using enrichment tech to get kids excited about creating an actual algorithm. Another thing to take it to a next level, the tangibility, I like a lot that you can use Legos. A lot of us have Legos, or you may have them at home or from past children or other families. Ask for them to be donated to your school. All you got to do is ask, and it's amazing what you can receive. But what I like about this particular activity is that a student came up with their own type of code. So it's called Lego Secret Coding Activities. So they used a different type of Lego piece, and then it identified the differentiator with an alphabet. And then from that, they created a secret code. And then the children had to build the Lego concept from the Lego code. I thought it was brilliant. The other activities that you can tap into at makewonder.com in our curriculum area, there are so many wonderful unplugged activities that complement the active robotic activities. This particular one is in the Learn to Code curriculum, where you can print out the actual sheet to be like 8.5 by 11, so you can use it at a center table. And then you've got little cards that you print out with this, and that you are actually coding for dash to get to dot. So it's another way for tangibility of handheld pieces for kids to understand what a sequence is, how to create a loop, how to create a pattern, but also working with directionality. So it's kind of in a way making Simon Says come to life, but you're using it with a paper model instead. Okay, our next section is going to be our 2nd and 3rd grade student learning examples. So anytime that any of you have questions, please feel free to add them into the question area and the top drop down, or please feel free to add them into the sidebar chat. I see great ideas that are coming in, and thanks for EdWeb for adding in those extra great activities that we're mentioning here. Peggy George, my friend, thank you so much for adding the additional ones that are there too. I appreciate your support tonight.
We do have 2 questions I would like to address before we move on. The first was, do you distribute the digital resources that students need in advance so that they're not all downloading them at the same time? And this was submitted from Peggy. And Peggy, yes, in the school district where I work, we have a management system for our iPads, and we try to download the iPad apps before we need to use them, just in case something would happen. So we do download those ahead of time. A lot of the other programs that we use are online, and there is no download needed, so we don't have to worry about those. One more question that we had was, or question and comment, is that the links in the presentation aren't working, and that in the presentation as we are live, they will not, you will not click on them, and they won't work that way, but you'll have access to this after the webinar, and you'll be able to access those links, as well as in the chat. You'll notice that they're getting entered into the chat. So the links that you see in the chat are what would be there if you would click on them, if it was an active link.
Okay, thank you so much, Angie. I appreciate you clarifying those statements for our teacher friends tonight. So as we continue on, 2nd and 3rd grade, but please note that any of these activities still can be leveled for children in a lower grade level or even in an upper grade level. So I know we had our teacher friends on earlier that were coming in from North Carolina, and they were mentioning, we're middle school teachers. We need some more ideas there. Absolutely, you can expand upon these. This is a perfect one. So when we talk about Dashketball, we've got a lesson in our online library, in our Code to Learn lesson library. What is wonderful with this is that it truly targets particular grade levels of 2nd, 3rd grade. But what I like about it is that we have found a natural fit for our middle school and even our high school kids that love to work with this, that have integrated concepts of geometry, and especially to reinforce particular angles and using an actual protractor with this with your students at given times. So you're going to see how Dash can work in many different facets. But continuing on here with Dashketball, what is so wonderful about this, it allows the children to take an everyday sport, to code a layup, shoot a ball at a target, to make a basket, and then have the robotic come back to you, and then you can create it to do its own confident dance, or you can record a special saying that after it's actually made the basket, that you can say, yeah, I got a 2-pointer, or I got a 3-pointer. You can really personalize the learning that can take place. This particular station that we've got set up for kids is great to work on the floor, right outside, like in California, we can go outside with all of the beautiful outdoor play areas because it works out great, or right outside your classroom door as part of your Learning Streets hallway area. So make that learning hallway, make that a learning street for kids to have an opportunity for a great station as well. But this is an opportunity that kids can work with distance. You're working with estimation, you're working with force, trajectory, and you fail forward with our kids until they can try to create that basket. And it's such a great event that they work with. A few other things, if you haven't seen already, but especially with Dash and Dot, these little characters are so fun to dress up for character development. What I love about this is that the ideas that have come in, so on makewonder.com, and you go into our education section, the Classroom to Code Learn Lesson Library has got a multitude of ideas of what you can possibly do. We've got a Pinterest page. You can follow Wonder Workshop at Wonder Workshop on Twitter, and if you just type in Wonder Workshop on Twitter, the teacher ideas from all over the world, every day I am just astounded with the incredible ideas of creativity that are coming through from students and teachers. Here's just a simple one. It's called Crafty Hats. And basically the kids created those hats, and there's a lot of measurements that went involved with that, but then to decorate them up and then to actually create, as they could choreograph a marching band. They could actually have them create their own fashion show, but we've got more ideas and linked to an e-magazine here for you. To take it to the next level, if any of you are using makerspaces, I personally like to make the connection with coding, robotics, and makerspaces because kids are naturally making and creating. So this is one that's created it's called Cricut Craft. Cricut Craft is it is a device that actually cuts out paper that you can use. So it's a device that you can do all kinds of different cuts with different materials. You take it to the next level and you can create it into a maker circuit card with foil copper tape, and then you can get it to light up so that when you play the xylophone, you could make it light up, kind of like a piano that they've done with Makey Makey before. Just a few other things for second and third grade. If you haven't seen the challenge cards, you're really missing out. These challenge cards are better than gold. They're wonderful. The teacher friends that I work with on a daily basis love them because they're aligned to code.org A through F. And it really helps our students take that applied robotics in a tangible way and the concepts of understanding a complex challenge and breaking it down into smaller snackable bites. This also allows for our kids to actually create and make with these cards, that if there's an obstacle course, they can set up and create the course along with the teacher, and then they code that challenge path to understand what a true function is, or what's a conditional, or what's a variable, or what's an event, like Angie mentioned earlier. It's helping those complex concepts come to life and helping kids understand them more clearly. A few other things making with this. I found this to be absolutely amazing. I came across this when I was in Southern California, working with my Newport Mesa team. And what was wonderful down there is the Newport Mesa School District is incorporating makerspaces along with robotics. And these are called Amazing Play Noodles. They're at the 99-cent only store that we have out here in the West. And what's amazing with it, these are 99 cents. But these are made out of very natural ingredients, so there will be no allergies for the kids, which is great. So it's a wheat-based and a flour is what it is. You just dab a little water on each end, and then they kind of just stick together. I thought, what a creative way for a robotics of any sort to create your own homes, your own community. Diorama sets up character or story development, whatever you'd like, but it's a great way of putting the tangibility to life to make that story come to life and really enhancing that robotic experience. Lastly, one of the things that if you haven't seen, any type of design challenge that you can incorporate with robotics is a true win for kids, because it's that design concept of the spatial reasoning. You're really emphasizing and focusing on mathematical concepts, science, literature, all at the same time. But this design challenge here is really helping students understand complex coding techniques, a strategy, working in pairs, collaboration, and communication, but really helping kids persevere and gain a stronger endurance with solving a problem, sticking to it, and really being excited because it's a design challenge concept. So Teach Wonder has their own Pinterest ideas too that teachers share too, and this is just an amazing board. I mean, it is just full of so much coding goodness. It's just amazing. And the ideas from teachers, that's what it's about right now, learning from everyone else. Okay, Angie, I'm going to turn it over to you after all that play.
So in this example, you'll notice that there are a lot of students with at least 2 students and 1 device. And in this lesson, this was not a one-time lesson. Students were working over many days, about 2 months, to create a story about if their teacher fell asleep, what would happen. So they got to work on their writing process. They worked on first, then, next, and last, making sure their sequence made sense, making sure they used detail, had some feeling words in there. They had order to it. And then they turned it into a project with Scratch Junior. Let me see if that will click. Okay, so using Scratch Junior, they were able to create actions with their characters to describe what happened in their story. They have some characters that were already created within the app itself, but they were able to create their own characters, take pictures of their faces so that they were the characters in the story. But again, this wasn't a one-time event. It happened over a series of 2 months. So students had a chance to try and change and then fix their work, talk to their peers. Half the class was working with their teacher on their carpet, and they were working through the editing process of their story. The other half of the class was sitting on the other side of the room with a partner, and they were pair programming their project into Scratch Junior. And then many of these pictures are from our author share out. Students knew that they were going to share their story with an authentic audience at the end, which made them even more excited as they were programming, knowing that they would be sharing this with their peers. Oh, let's try that again.
Okay.
So within that project, students were working on their English language arts. They were also programming, and they were learning how to sequence the events. The Simon Says project had the ability for them to learn about having to have that flag at the beginning, and if there was no flag, then their code wouldn't run. So they were all learning how to get the flag first, and then use the blocks to sequence their events. Naomi, are you able to get our presentation up? Or Regina, are you able to get that up for us?
For some reason, yeah, I just wanted to show us this dynamic duo. There we go.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, whoops.
It went away. Okay, so I'll continue talking about the Scratch Junior. There we go. So students were pair programming as they were creating their presentation in Scratch Junior. Then they were able to share it out with their peers in their author share out, and they had 2 minutes to share their story, and then we went around the circle so that everyone got to see everyone's stories.
Okay, as we continue on to our 4th and 5th grade student learning experiences, we have a few more to share with you, and then we have some authentic reflection and assessments that we'd like to share as we close out our session. But we had some tie-ins, and from what we can see from our back channel chat, absolutely, Angie and I are very passionate about having cross-curricular connections with each and everything that you do with coding. Coding should never be taught in isolation. It needs to relate to a child's world, how to really get kids excited and engaged with their learning and make it extremely personalized to them so that they can see that true benefit of how it relates to everyday life. So that's why storytelling is very important too. We've got 2 great activity links here from our teacher friends nationwide that have shared some great storytelling of how to connect actually geography, of understanding our world and our nation, and then on character development as well. So we won't go in detail, but I've got some great learning connections. One thing I saw recently is that high school teachers were recycling their United States maps and their world maps because they got new ones. They cascaded those maps down to the elementary level. The elementary teachers actually took them and they got them laminated and they used them on the floor. And so part of that coding journey is part of that large diorama creation that the kids created. They use that for kids to actually code the path with Dash. They get to a certain point on the map, and that's when Dash would speak back, because of the coding from the kids of recording their voice, a factual important statement that occurred in that particular state during a specific time period. It was absolutely done very, very, very well, and it made it so real because that map made it come to life. So just one example. Some other things, if you haven't already figured this one out, this is my passion too. I love a good read, and I love a hard copy book yet. And I tell you, there's so many wonderful books out there about computer science and robotics in the classroom, and the stories that are coming to life, especially to inspire our young girls and our young female students. Anytime that you can incorporate a station just to have the literature there for kids just to soak up that goodness of learning from a great story, that's what it's about too. Having no tech at all, but the tangibility of a good book, and to have an opportunity to read and share stories amongst students themselves. Some other things we mentioned a little bit earlier too. Why not have a robot fashion show? We also have a link here. It's called the Dash and Dot Show, with two brilliant children that are sharing their story of how they're using Dash and Dot in their everyday worlds. But they also have used this quite wonderfully to actually coach teachers of how to get started using Dash and Dot in their classroom. It's wonderful. And just really some unique ideas of what you can do. Again, from challenge cards that you can work with the kids, creating a fashion show to bring characters and literature studies to life, but also everything related to our world. Now look at our teacher friends. We're giving a huge shout out here tonight. These are our teacher friends from Atlanta, Georgia. They're from our French school. And these two teachers are rocking the world right now. Why are they rocking the world? It's because they also have a unit of study that they're studying World War I right now, and also French Revolutionary War. And they are creating outfits for Dash and Dot, and they have a sewing unit. These teachers said that they are not necessarily the strongest when it comes to sewing, but the kids know how to sew. Isn't this brilliant? So the kids are creating outfits along with these two amazing teacher friends. We have Karine and we have Frederic that are both here, and their teacher names are here. We want to give them a shout out because they are doing amazing things and making the literature and that history come to life. So thanks, teacher friends. It's so good to have you here. A few other things we wanted to share. If you're into creating amazing designs and you are designing on a dime, why not take that butcher paper or block paper out, have kids create and paint, let it dry, create that customized path of community or a street symbol, or maybe it can be, again, it could be something related to a state map. It could be maybe a story from the book come to life. But then having the kids design and create, and they are part of that to help code that learning path. This activity link will take you to Tech with Miss Haley, and what she is a great teacher friend from Australia. So I think you'll learn lots from her and lots of ideas. Another example, teachers have got Tinker Toys. How many of you remember Tinker Toys? Yeah, Tinker Toys. What I think that's really amazing, Tinker Toys was one of my favorites when I was young. So I'm going to really say my age right now. So I've been there for a little bit, right? Many decades here. But Tinker Toys are great that it actually gives a different spatial relationship and like a 2D, 3D effect when kids build. So having kids create that maze. So Erin Gerdes, thank you so much from Texas for sharing your picture. And then Miss Carrie Willis is also from California, near Redlands, California. She made the Olympics come to life this last year. She's all over Twitter with this. And so she did a whole theme unit really showcasing what you can do to incorporate the Olympic theme. And again, with math, science, literature, geography, everything, you name it, it fit. It was just beautiful. And the challenges that she set up, but especially the challenges that the students designed. So the empowerment there was just amazing. So Angie, I'll turn this section over to you.
Just a reminder that we would love to see your ideas as well, whether you reach out on Twitter and share them or in the chat, but also in the EdWeb community. So there was a question about how do I ask questions if I'm watching this later and I have a question. The EdWeb community is a great place to ask questions as well as Twitter. So this is an example of a fourth grade classroom where we were working with triangles and angles. So this was the math standard that our teacher was working on. In this example, you'll see that there is a triangle on the floor, and students had to code Sphero using the Sphero EDU app, block-based programming, to get their Sphero to successfully drive that triangle. So they were working on distance and speed and angles. And they were in groups of 2 to 3 students, so they were learning how to work together. This was a project that we did, again, over a time span. The first day we did this, it was figuring out how far the dash would drive at a certain distance for a certain length of time. By the end of the 4th time we did it, we had one group who was successfully able to make their Sphero drive that triangle. We had about a half an hour for each station. So kids had about 4 30-minute segments of time before they were able to get that triangle completed. It was a lot of group work. It was a lot of reflecting in their journal and writing down what was working and what wasn't working. These students also had prior access to computer science and coding programs like Codable and Code.org and robots that they used in classrooms when they were in younger grades. But one resource on this page I'd really like to point out is Girls Who Code. They have a great video series called My Code, where teenage girls explain in 2 to 3 minute videos different aspects of computer science, different kind of code, why they code, what they've created with code, what kind of languages there are, and what they're used for. So every time we started this activity in a classroom of all students, we watched a video, and then we had some time to discuss what we thought based on that video. In this example, this is in a 5th grade classroom with Amanda Anderson. And this class, we posed a question to the students. Is there something in your school that you would like to change? Is there a problem that you see, and how could you help solve it? So this was our project-based approach. We also brought in a lot of English language arts standards as students were writing and coming up with solutions. These 2 girls that you see in this picture had the problem that during recess time, some students were causing recess to be taken away for everyone based on behaviors. So they wanted to create an app that their 5th grade teachers could use to track student behavior. So if students were acting up, they would get points, and those students would have to choose something else to do instead of everyone. So in this example, you see they're using the Scratch application on a Chromebook. Knowing that we had limited time, at first I tried to guide them in the direction of a Google form, thinking that it would be quicker for them, something that they've already used, and that they would be able to accomplish this task within our time frame. But they were adamant that they wanted to create an app. So I went with it with Scratch. As they came up with questions along the way and they got stuck, they would ask for help or ask for support. And my strategy for them was to ask that question in another way, tell them something I noticed on their screen, guide them to other ways to find support. Instead of me giving them that answer, they had to figure it out on their own. And at one point, I caught them doing the happy dance, the satisfaction dance, because they figured out how to use the broadcast block without my help. And they said it was so satisfying. What I've learned with this activity is that rubrics are very helpful for helping guide students through not having one right answer, through having a variety of projects available. Some students chose to do a cartoon movie. Some students chose to do a green screen movie. Everyone had a different project going on, but through the use of a rubric, we're able to have all of these projects happening at the same time and be successful for everyone. So we would like to take this moment again. So we just talked about all these different activities and standards that you can do in your classroom. We're really hoping that you see how it's an interdisciplinary approach. It's connected with the curriculum and the standards that you're already doing in your classroom, and that's how it can really fit and work for everyone. So our question to you is, what standards did you see in action, and how could this work in your learning environment? After this, we're going to give you a little bit of information about reflection and assessment. So stick around for a little longer. So as the ideals come in, we're going to keep going, and Naomi will kick us off.
Yeah, so just a few more things, a quick, simple shares. Just remember, creative reflection really captures authentic learning for our students. The opportunity to not only have a choice and voice of their learning, but not only can they share verbally, but also their creative written reflections. What we're seeing from kids nationwide, that when they have been involved in any type of coding and robotics program, they're extremely excited and they are so more willing to share their creative ideas and what they've learned. So we've just got a few simple PDFs here for you of creative different ways that you can use in K through 5, or you can ramp them up to use for your middle school, high school. But some simple like intro or exit tickets, but also creative reflections. So we've just got a couple selections here for you. Another thing just to keep in mind for our kids, especially at middle school, high school, why not have the opportunity to provide your students to actually do, you can call them daydream books, you can call them vision books, but just creative vision reflections. Not only are kids thinking for longevity wise, but they're making connections through the years. So this is just an added insight for you to help your kids stay focused on the main goal of what's important to them and how and what they will contribute to our world with their new creative insight when it comes to coding and robotics. A few other things that we wanted to share, some other great tools, more verbal reflection and video reflections. Flipgrid, if you haven't used it, you need to use it. Remember, we're both from Minnesota, and this is created from Minnesota. So Flipgrid is wonderful. It's a great tie-in, and I know Angie uses it quite frequently as well. But there's great hashtags that you can follow, and there's a whole robotics thread that's out there right now too, and getting involved with really reflecting and sharing an interdisciplinary approach to learning when it comes to coding and robotics. And it's very easy to get set up for yourself as well. Angie, I'll turn it over to you.
And our last tool that we have for reflection is Seesaw. So Seesaw can be used in many grade levels, kindergarten through high school. You can reflect via pictures, videos, recording voices. In this example, you'll see students are sitting a few lockers apart from each other, and they're recording their reflections from an activity that we did. After students reflect on their activity, we started to teach students about being a great digital citizen in this world and how we can practice that in Seesaw. So this, if you can see on your screen, it's a poster. It's a tag poster. So these are what we focus on when commenting on other people's posts. Tell me something that you liked. Ask me a question. Give me a compliment or a suggestion. Students can type out their thoughts or they can record their voices. And I found this on Twitter, but there's also a great Seesaw in Your PJs YouTube video. So if you're wanting to know more about how to help kids understand how to be good digital citizens starting in kindergarten, this is a great activity, and you can watch a whole webinar on just this topic alone. So we have been answering your questions all throughout the webinar. If you have any additional questions, feel free to enter them into the chat or into the question area. Were there any more that came up within the last few minutes that you noticed, Naomi?
From what I'm seeing, no. I think most of them have been clarified and read from what I can see. But at this time, teacher friends, please feel free to add any questions that you still may have into the question bank or now into the open back channel chat. Angie and I will stay on for a few more minutes that if you'd like to have that conversation. And thank you so much for staying online with us. We're just a little bit over time, but we've got time that if you'd like to ask any enduring questions that we could answer.
While we're watching the chat, I also wanted to mention that right now, the National Science Foundation has a STEM for All video contest going. So if you head over to their website, I've been watching wonderful videos on computational thinking and computer science in elementary schools. There is even one specific to Dash and Dot and a special education teacher, making it inclusive for all students. I was just watching another one on computational thinking, and I saw the Keyball robot in it, which we talked about earlier on. So after this webinar, I'm heading over to their website to watch a few more videos to see the research that's going on that I may not know of, but I should know of.
That's excellent, Angie. And as you can see, we have the links here, but according to EdWeb and from Regina, you will be getting up a follow-up email also to follow up with that certification if you need continuing education credit hours, but also that you'll have access to the slide deck and joining the K-8 coding community. So we do have on our last page what we have here. We have our integrated links, but we also have more that Regina will be sharing with you. We just wanted you to be noting that. My contact information is here. And again, my name is Naomi Harm. I am from Wonder Workshop as the Senior Strategic Education Manager for the West Coast. And you can follow me on Twitter at Naomi Harm. We also have my teacher friend. We have Angie. And Angie, I'll let you close out you at this time.
Yes, you can contact me at kultoff@pd.code.org. That is my email address, through code.org, where I'm a computer science fundamentals facilitator for them. And I get to focus in on elementary educators and helping bring the A through F courses come to life through practice. But in addition to that, I am, again, a technology integrationist in central Minnesota. I am also on Twitter, and you can learn about everything else I do on my website, which is linked right there.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It sounds like we've got storms across the country, so some people have been in and out today. So we're hoping that you can rewatch this webinar if you are having difficulty with video or also with sound audio playbacks today. So again, you will have the opportunity that you can log back in with your EdWeb webinar credentials that you logged in with today. And you also will be following back up. Regina will be following back up with you with the EdWeb so that you can gain access to take those questions so that you can earn a certification for continuing education credit hours. So again, the same way that you got in, you can log in with your credentials for that. Again, here's the ending slide so that you just have a little bit of an overview that if you need those clock hours, this is how you can get back in and to get into the Ed community once again. Well, Angie, I think that's all we have for tonight.
I haven't seen any more questions come in, so I think we have answered all of them.
I think we have, and so we'll close this out and saying, hey, join us for the next Ed webinar. I've got an amazing teacher friend, Dylan Portless. He's coming in from Wonder Workshop as well, and he will be leading and co-facilitating with my other great friend, Anthony Fudd. He's the Senior Product Manager for Wonder Workshop. They're going to be talking about designing and programming language for early learners. This is going to be phenomenal. So these two gentlemen do a great job at where I work at, and I just work with so many inspiring individuals. So I'm glad that they are both co-presenting and looking forward to it to Tuesday, May 22nd at 5 p.m. Eastern. So you don't want to miss this next webinar, teacher friends. Okay. Thanks so much, Angie. It was a pleasure working with you once again. And hey, keep warm in Minnesota. I'm glad the snow's all gone. Okay.
It's beautiful today. Yes, finally.
Yep, finally. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll just wait till this window closes out. We'll be on for just a little bit longer, but feel free to soak up the learning goodness yet and look at that back channel chat because lots of shares were added while we were presenting. So lots of great connections tonight.